Dr. Walter Coleman.
Thank you. Thank you. All right. This is a subject that a lot of people don't want to talk about, obviously. It is the end of life, but it's a very important part. And how we end well makes a big difference in how our lives go. Sometimes we get a choice about that, and sometimes we don't. I was reminded of a story of a pastor that was preaching about this subject to his congregation, and he was sitting there, and of course he was waxing eloquent and talking about the end of life, and talking about death and about the things that are surrounding death. And he was sitting there, and he wanted to give a dramatic effect, as some preachers want to do. And so he was sat there, and he said, he backed off kind of a little bit, and he kept reading into the pulpit, and he said, I want you to know that every single member in this auditorium today is going to die. Well, one man sitting on the front just looked up at him and just smiled real big. And the pastor looked down and he thought, man, that's strange. Guy's smiling at me when I tell him everybody's going to die. So he thought, well, maybe he just didn't understand. So he winds around, says it again, comes back around and says, okay, for the second time, everybody in this congregation there's a member of this congregation is going to die. Man just smiles real big, and the man, what is wrong with this guy? I said, he just doesn't get it. And so he keeps on going. So he comes around the third time, and this time the guy almost laughs in his face. Well, this just really unnerved the pastor. So he waits at the end of the service, goes out, the man's coming out. He walks up to him and he says, I just want to ask you something. He said, I made a point 3 times. I told everybody in there that every member of this congregation was going to die. He said, well, not me, I'm not a member. And so you see that some people, the Europeans say about America, that America is the only country in the world that thinks that death is an option. And, and the truth of the matter is, it's not an option. All of us owe God one death. And it's vitally important that we deal with that issue. And it's really important. The thing that surrounds death is that it is going to happen to every single one of us. The question is, when and under what circumstances? Those are 2 things that we don't know. And sometimes we have control over that, and sometimes we don't. Every day that we have is a gift. It is a gift of God. Every breath that we take is a gift. It is a gift from God. Our length of years is important. I just turned 70. And I'm sitting there thinking, okay, I've got my 70 in. Anything beyond this is gravy. That's what the Bible says. And some of you know where I am. So it's important, I think, that we know about these issues. We're really a death-denying culture. We really don't want to talk about it. We really don't want to deal with it. We start talking about youth and all the rest of it, but we also are aware that the statistics are showing that we're becoming an older society. That is the reality. In 2010, there are 90,000 people that were over 100. In 2050, there will be 900,000 people in this country over 100. 900,000. That means that we're getting older. We have to deal with issues that come our way. And the truth of the matter is, we have a lot of technology that is coming forward in the medical field. And the truth is, we have more technology than we have ethics for. When you come to a hospital, I ask you a question. What can I do to help you deal with whatever your disease may be? That's the medical question. The ethical question is, what should I do? And so particularly if you're dealing with very critical issues, you're dealing with end-of-life issues, we can technically keep a person alive. But should we? And that line is constantly moving and constantly changing. And because it's constantly moving and constantly changing, we need a set of guidelines. And what we call those guidelines are advanced directives. So that people will know if you ever find yourself in a place where you can't make a decision, or you're not in a place because of rationality, or because of dementia, or because of declining health, or inability to speak, or those kind of things, if you get in that position, who is going to speak for you? Who is going to know what your desire is? Who's going to know what needs to be done? In the absence of that, the medical community, by law, has to do everything to preserve your life. You may have had an extensive period of time in which you've been declining in health. You may have had a number of heart attacks. You may have been dealing with other life-threatening issues and things that have been going down on a regular basis. And you may not want to have those kind of things, anything done for you. But if you don't let that somebody know, then the medical community is going to do everything to preserve your life. That's the first directive of the medical community. First, do no harm, do the things that can preserve life. And sometimes in the preservation of life, you can actually do harm. And some of you may have lived long enough to know or seen some situations in your own family where you've seen that kind of thing happen. Quality of life issues are vitally important. They're vitally important in the sense that people want to know, I have a certain thing that I want to do in my life. If I can't do those things, then my life is not worth living. And some people have a right to make a decision about that. And different people have different values as to what that means in terms of the quality of their lives. Treatment may be withdrawn from somebody. And sometimes people think if you go in and say, okay, we're going to stop treatment. We may stop the active treatment, but we never stop caring. We never stop doing the things that are necessary to bring comfort to an individual. So when somebody talks about, quote, pulling the plug, which is kind of a really, harsh term, that doesn't mean that we stop doing everything. We will do everything we can to make sure that the people are comforted. It's called palliative care. And palliative care means that we continue to do those things that will support and help people. I can guarantee you 100% healing. I cannot guarantee you 100% cure. You'll either be healed on this side or you'll be healed on the other side. But most people, when they pray, what are they praying for? They're praying for healing. And what do they mean by healing? They mean restoring the person to the health that they can have and the productive life that they can have here in this realm. That's the important thing to understand. But I often say to people, I can guarantee you healing. I cannot guarantee you cure. And I think that's an honest statement that I think anybody in the medical community can do. Advanced directives are important. Advanced directives usually means in 1991 there was a law passed in the country that said if you come to the hospital, they have to ask you the question, do you have advanced directives? And what they meant by that is, do you have a living will and do you have a health care power of attorney? Can somebody speak for you? Now, most hospitals, when that question is asked, they will give you a brochure that will basically say to you, here's what constitutes an advanced directive. Here's what's a living will, and here's some information generally about a healthcare power of attorney. They do not normally give you the actual documents. Here in our hospital, if you ask for that, we will actually give you the documents. There's one that's produced by South Carolina. It has 14 pages of instruction in the front, and then the actual documents are there in the back. But what I'm giving to you today is what is called advanced directives with heart or compassion. It's called 5 wishes. It takes the place of those 2 documents. It has those 2 documents in it, but then it expands it beyond that. The person that put this together was a man that worked with Mother Teresa for 12 years. And one of the assignments that he had was working in Washington, D.C. And he saw what happened when people were in the hospital and when they were surrounded with a life and death situation. And he realized that there was much more to it than just the physical dimensions that relate to death. Death is not strictly a medical issue. Yes, most of the time it's going to take place in a hospital. Sometimes it's going to be at home. Sometimes it's going to be people ushered in through hospice and other people that are there to care for us. So we don't know exactly where it's going to be, but it's beyond just a medical issue. It also involves emotions, and it involves spirituality. So all of that comes together and comes into play. And the 5 wishes is a way of addressing all of those concerns. So I've given you a copy of the 5 wishes. Let me walk with you through that so you'll understand exactly what's involved. How many of you have advance directives? Good many of you. How many of you have had discussions with people recently about that? Does everybody know where your advance directives are? All right. How many of you people, when you come to the hospital, do you bring your advance directives with you? Okay. That's where it begins to break down. Because if you have your advance directives and you're coming to the hospital and you're going to be admitted, please make sure that you bring those with you. Because we need to know, the doctors need to know, the nurses need to know, everybody that's taking care of you needs to know what you want. And you may have your person to speak for you. They may be available sometimes, they may not. So if you have that document, then we have it on file and we know exactly what you need to have done. That's one of the reasons for doing the advance directive, is because you want to convey the information and have the information readily available to people so that your wishes can be carried out. That's the whole purpose of having it. So make sure that that is included in your care for the advance directives. It makes a huge difference here. I've seen too many instances. In fact, we had one recently where an individual had a clear understanding of exactly what they wanted to have done. But because that was not on the chart, they got into some problems. The children got in a fight over whether they wanted to honor Mama's wishes. They didn't want to honor them. Mama said stop. The doctors, because they didn't have it and the family was insisting, overrode that, went through all kinds of trauma, and because a lot of stress, because the document was not in place and it was not honored. So I just say that to you to let you know that's important. In the 5 wishes, wish number 1, which you will find on page 4, is to name a person that will be your healthcare power of attorney. Now, why is this important? If you ever get to the place where you cannot speak or where you cannot convey what's going on with you, then this will come into play. You need somebody that will be strong, somebody who will be willing to speak for you, know what you believe, why you believe it, and what you want to have done. Now, I say that person has to be strong, because I've seen situations where you've named an individual, and a lot of times the truth of the matter is, folks, family dynamics don't change a whole lot when there's death. In fact, if anything, if there's all kind of problems in there, and you've got brothers and sisters that are fighting, or aunts or uncles, and you got somebody that's away, and then you got a lot of other people that are here, and this person that's away comes swooping in, they haven't been involved in all the other stuff, and guess what? This person over here that's been away, they know a whole lot more because they're just done everything wrong about Mama. But the other people have been here all along. People that are here may have the say-so about the health care, but this person over here comes swooping in and just raises all kinds of cane. So you need somebody that's strong and can be a solid advocate and speak clearly what needs to be done and convey to everybody, to the family and to the others. But the dynamics are not going to change a whole lot. If you got people that are just got at each other's throats, guess what? I've seen them at each other's throats over the body in the hospital. So it does get kind of crazy. So it's important to have somebody that's strong. There are certain things you can see on page 5. You can see that there's some statements there. There are 9 statements there. No, more than that. But one of the reasons this document is so good is because unlike some of the ones that have the legalese, these are very simple statements. It says things that you give the person that is your representative the kind of rights that you give them to speak on your behalf. And it can tell you specific things that you want them to do, and if there's certain things you don't want them to do, all you have to do is put an X mark through them. and that nullifies that particular thing that they normally would carry out. So that is a way of doing that. It is very simple and straightforward, and it shows exactly what the person can do and what they can't do. It also spells out who can be a representative. A person that's an immediate part of the family can't be a representative. A brother and sister can't be that representative. It has to be somebody that is going to speak for you, that is not going to be an individual, a doctor, somebody in the hospital. They can't speak for you. It needs to be somebody that's going to be a part of the family that can speak for you and do the things that need to be done. I may have misspoken that. I meant the family can do it. They can, but I'm sorry, I misspoke on that. It can't be doctors, it can't be nurses, anybody that would benefit from the death. They can't be a representative, but you can have a family member that is solid. Now, sometimes it can be a brother and sister, it can be dual, but a lot of times you need a primary person, and then you need some secondaries if the primary person is not available. But you need somebody that would be strong and speak for them. And then once that person is done, then if you want to change your mind, all you have to do is just simply say, I revoke this. Or you can just put an X mark through it, and it makes it null and void. But sometimes people get confused. They come to the hospital and they say, you know, I want to make sure that my house is taken care of. I want to make sure that the bank account's okay. And they said, you know, where do I get one of these forms? I said, can you fill out one in the hospital? I say, no, that's a will. that's a power of attorney that's not a health care power of attorney. So what you're dealing with here is health care, not the other part. Anything that you need to do pertaining to your estate, anything you need to do pertaining to your home, anything you need to do pertaining to your will, all of that is done by a power of attorney that is separate from healthcare power of attorney. So sometimes people get that confused. So if you hear somebody talking about, well, I'm going to go to the hospital and I'll get this will done. Well, no, you won't, because we can't do it here. And we won't do it here, because that has to be a legal document that's of a different nature. But that's, this is the one that pertains to that. This is probably the strongest part of the document, because as circumstances move, then you're looking at a healthcare situation that's on a continuum. You may, for instance, somebody may have made a statement at one point, I don't ever want to be on a machine that's breathing for me. Okay, a person maybe has had pneumonia for a number of times. At a certain point, they get pneumonia in a really bad way. They're admitted to the critical care. They recommend that they put them on a breathing machine. The question at that point is this going to make any difference in the long run? If you put them on there and say, okay, after a period of 14 days, 21 days, whatever it is, the lungs will clear up, they will come back, everything will be okay. But suppose you took literally, I don't ever want to be on a machine. Well, if you do that, you probably could cut that person's life short. So you need to know, and even if you put them on a machine, and the doctor says, I think they're going to get better. All right, suppose they get septic and they don't get better. Then another decision needs to be made along that continuum. So what I'm saying to you is that the person that is speaking for the individual has to be in conjunction with where we are in the process of the disease and how it's unfolding. It may unfold on the positive side, it may unfold on the negative side. But along that continuum, you will be making decisions because the person that you're representing is not in a place to make those decisions. And the doctor will need to have somebody to consult with and to talk with about what's going on that continuum. So that's really the real strength of having a person who is there and can understand exactly what's going on. It makes a huge difference to the doctors, to the family, and to the one that is being treated. It makes a huge difference. The second wish is what we call a living will. This is life support treatment. Now, one of the things that we need to understand is that advanced directives needs one other piece of information. If, for instance, a person has had a long-standing series of deteriorations in their health, and they know that they've been brought back 2 or 3 times, and they don't want to do that again. If you call EMS and they come to your house and you do not have a do not resuscitate order, they are obligated by law to bring you back. Regardless of whether you don't want that or not, for you to say it is not going to make any difference. You have to have an order in place. It needs to be signed. It needs to be visible, where when the person comes, you can say, here's the do not resuscitate order. We do not want that. It needs to be in place so that that can be honored. If you don't have it in place, then they have to do everything they can. That's by law, and they're there to do that. So you need to have a do not resuscitate order in case of an emergency, and make sure that it's in place. Now, when does wish number 2 come into play? You see there, close to death, if a coma, not expected to wake up or recover, permanent and severe brain damage, or any other condition that you outline. And it has underneath there statements as to what you would wish to happen if those set of circumstances came into play. So it comes into play at very critical and crucial times, usually at the latter stages of a death process. And it would come into play, and you state what you would like to have done. You can see there are 3 options there for you to check off, and you check off one of those. And then the person who is your healthcare power of attorney would know exactly, and the doctor would know exactly what you want to have done as those circumstances arise. So it makes it important. This is wish number 2, which is what we refer to as the living will. And so this is important, and you can see that it's very clear, and once again, very straightforward. You check those things off, and then you keep that on file, and the doctor knows what your wishes are. Your healthcare power of attorney knows what the wishes are. So that is the basic 2 documents that when you start considering the advance directives, these are the 2 documents that basically constitute those two things that are legally binding. Now, the compassionate part, the part with the heart, comes in wish number 3, wish number 4, and wish number 5. Now, wish number 3 is my wish of how comfortable I want to be. Now, I see a lot of times when people come into the hospital, they will say, or they were given oxygen, this kind of stuff. What usually happens when you do that? Your mouth gets real dry, doesn't it? And a lot of people want to say, I want to make sure that I have moisture in my mouth. Some people want to make sure they're clean. Some people want to make sure that they're kept warm. Some people want to make sure that, that they don't mess on themselves. They want to make sure that everything is cleaned up. They want to make sure that, that they have pictures around them. They want to make sure that maybe sometimes music. Sometimes they want to have their own pillow or their own favorite blanket. There's all kinds of things. How comfortable do you want to be? So it goes beyond just the medical part. It goes with the things that will be meaningful to you. If you're at the end of life, you want some kindness, you want some tenderness, you want some love that's involved in it. And we talk here about caring is our calling. It's not just we hire as much for attitude here as we do for aptitude. And you can do things in delivery of your system. You can do it with a sour face, or you can do it with a pleasant face. And so the people that surround people, if you want it done with some pleasure, with something, tell people what you want, what would be meaningful to you. It's the end of your life. And you can say, this is what I want. This is what would make me feel good, knowing that I'm going to be going from this world to the next. This is what I would like to do in my transition. This is what's important to me. And you need to convey that, because people can guess, but they don't know, particularly if you're not in a place to tell them. But if you told them in advance, then they can do those things that will give you comfort. Some people want to have their hands held. Some people want to have, something. They want some people to touch them. Some people don't want people to touch them, but they want somebody just to be there all the time, be in the room. It makes a lot of difference. So this is wish number 3. How comfortable do you want to be? My wish of how I want people to treat me. That's another one that's vitally important. It's important to know that, yeah, I want my church to be informed that I'm in the hospital. I want the people from my Sunday school class or my pastor to come and pray with me. I want certain friends to know that I'm here. Sometimes you may want to say, hey, you know, I've got a favorite cat. I've got a dog that I'd like to have and come see me. I mean, we do pet therapy here now. I mean, sometimes that's their children. You know how important that is. Some people, I mean, sometimes when I hear people going home and said, you know, I haven't been home in 2 weeks and I don't know how my dog's going to survive. I mean, it's very important. And sometimes that might be the best thing that we can do to put people together, or to have a grandchild or somebody that they're waiting for to come from out of town, or to get a card or a telephone call or something like that. How do they want people to be treated? Wish to have pictures. Wish to be out of pain. Knowing that you're in pain. Particularly hospice does a great job with that. They want to make sure that you're not in pain, even if they knock you completely out. They don't want you to suffer in the midst of how you make the transition in life. And so it makes a lot of difference in that wish number 4. Wish number 5 goes to what I want my loved ones to know. And this is an important thing. Some people have gone through their whole lives not saying, I love you to certain people, or I forgive you to certain people. There's a lot of unfinished business. And a lot of unfinished business, sometimes you wish that there was more time, or you wish you had said, or you hope that some people know. And sometimes there's been such a gulf. And sometimes it's only a matter of a short period of time that you get to resolve that. And in the absence of resolving that, what you leave is a big ball of unresolved issues that makes the grief process even harder. Because then the person that's left on the other side says, oh, I wish I had told them how much they meant to me. I wish I had told them how much I loved them. I wish I'd told them that I forgive them for what they did. They knew the best they could, but somehow they were wounded, and they wounded me. And I forgive them, and it's okay. Sometimes those things need to be said, because it can make a huge difference in whether you sit and regret everything, or you're angry, or all the rest of it. It makes a huge, huge difference. So those things are important. I wish my family to know that I'm at peace, or that I believe that there's a better place for me, and that I'm okay with my death. I'm okay with it. Sometimes families need to know that. So there's a lot of things that can be conveyed in the end. You can also let people know, do you want to be cremated, or do you want to be buried? Where do you want to be buried? Do you have some place, do you have a funeral home that you want? If you die in our hospital, then one of the questions they're going to be asking you is, what funeral home are you going to use? So do you know that? Do you have a plan that you paid for in advance? Do you know where that is? These are questions that need to be important. One of the things that I do, sometimes I do some funerals, and sometimes people here, they don't have a church home and they'll ask me to do a funeral. I don't do it very often, and sometimes, obviously, I don't have an ongoing relationship with these people, but because they've been in here for a while, they ask me if I'll do the funeral. And a lot of times I'll ask the family, I said, well, did they have any favorite passages of Scripture? Did they have a favorite hymn? Did they have a favorite passage of poetry? Did they have something that was very meaningful to them? How would they like to be remembered? And sometimes if you convey that in advance, then you can share that with people, and knowing that their wishes are honored. I had the privilege of preaching doing the funeral for my father-in-law. But the thing that was unique about it, and you're going to think this is funny, but I wrote his funeral out before he died, and I let him read it. So he read the funeral, and when he got down to the end, he said, I can't live up to that. And I said, you already have. And he said, okay, if you don't get this right, I'm coming back and haunt you. So that's unique. The other experience I had was I buried my mom on my birthday. So I had to do her funeral on my birthday. And so I've had a couple of unique experiences there. But whenever I do a funeral I want to make it unique. I wanted to make it because every single solitary person is a one-of-a-kind original. You know, I hate to go to funerals and never hear a name mentioned. I hate to go to a funeral and just it's almost like generic body over here died. Who was it? Who were these people? I mean, where did they live? What did they do? So I think we want to convey those wishes and say the things because every single person is unique. We're all part of the plan. That's why we're here. And when we come to the end, our end of this part of the plan is over. But life goes on. We don't know how or what or when or all the rest of it, but it does go on in another way. And so we do a thing, and really I like to think of death not as an end, but as a birthday, because you're being birthed into the next form of life. I mean, it's really a celebration. It's a celebration of what you've been, what you've done, where you've been, the relationships you've had, the love you've shared, the funny things, the good things, the bad things, all of life. You've got that. And so it makes a huge difference. And being able to convey that to someone, that's a part of wish number 5, to do that. So you can see that all the 5 wishes come together to form a package. It deals with the medical part of it, deals with the emotional part of it, deals with the relationship part of it, deals with the spiritual part of it, and deals with some very practical things as to what you want to have done. So I think this is a very powerful document. Once you sign this document, then all the things are then a part of your wishes. You then convey that to the person that's going to be in charge. You convey it to the family. And it also gives you an opportunity to talk about these things with your family. Now, when somebody's walking down the street and they remember so-and-so that was in the hospital, and you say to a person, you know, I don't ever want to be on a machine, that is not a conversation. That's comment. But some people think, oh yeah, I've talked about it. You had a comment. You did not talk about it. So sometimes, as much as we want to go away from it, one of the best gifts that you can give to your family is have the conversation. Talk about it. It's reality. It's going to come to every single solitary one of us. Front guy in row with laughing, well, notwithstanding. It is going to come to everybody. And we're going to have to deal with it. So the 5 wishes are important. Now, I've included 2 other things in the back that really kind of play off of wish number 5, because part of what I deal with every day is after the fact. And what most people have a hard time dealing with is the whole issue of grief. The person that you loved has now passed away. And some of you have experienced that. And so you've gone through the process. But some people don't really understand exactly what the process is. And a lot of times, and particularly immediately afterwards, what do you feel? I just feel numb. Anybody been there? I just feel numb. Guess what? They say, well, why am I not feeling anything? What's wrong with me? Absolutely nothing is wrong with you. It is a gift of God that puts a patch over your emotions. And the reason that happens is because if you felt the full impact of what that loss is all about, then you would not be able to stand it. And so your emotions basically shut down. It's almost like you're frozen. And that is a gift from God. And then as time goes on, it begins to melt. And as it does, then you begin to feel more. And then 6 months from there, you'll probably cry more than you did initially. You will just start beginning to feeling more. You'll start thinking about things more. You'll start going through what I call the rituals of the first, whether it be Christmas or Thanksgiving or the birthday or an anniversary or all the rest of it. And every time one of those things comes up, you begin to think about where you were with that person and what was going on and this kind of thing, and it hits you emotionally. And you begin to deal with those issues, and the things begin to unfold. And then you begin to say, well, you know, some days I feel okay, and other days I feel like it just happened yesterday. That's normal. That's normal. But most people don't do that. And what does society do? Society wants you to shut it down. After 2 or 3 weeks, if you're working, what do they want you to do? Get on back to work. You got things to do. You got a deadline. Well, I know it's been bad. You lost your mom. You lost your wife. You lost your son. You lost whatever it is. But now you got to get back to work. But you're sitting there going, you know, I can't think. I don't. What's wrong with me? I ought to be over this because society says so. No, I don't care what society says. This is the process. And I wanted you to look at it because some people, they make you want to feel guilty, like, well, just get over it. Just get on with it. You know, what's wrong with you? There's nothing wrong with you. You've received a psychological and spiritual wound. And just as you have a physical wound, it takes time for it to heal. And so understand that it is a process. Now, I've given you a second piece of information. And why did I do that? Because once again, think about what I just said. You have received a psychological and spiritual wound. You're in the process of healing. But there are certain practical things that you have to do. You have to go to the funeral home. You have to deal with all the burial stuff. You have to help write an obituary that if you haven't done in advance, you have to deal with that. You have to go to the bank and tell people that this person has died. Get stuff lined up. If you're in charge of the probate, you have to go to the court. You have to deal with all of that. You have to contact the insurance companies if you have insurance. You have to contact all kind of people if you have investments. If you have the will, you have to deal with a lawyer. You have to deal with the courts, all the rest of it. And when are you doing that? When you are at your rawest. Now, does that seem crazy? Yeah, it does. And then you wonder why people make bad decisions when all that other stuff is coming at you. But what you see here is some of the things that you can anticipate. And what I'll give you, this is actually coming from Consumer Reports. It was last month. It was in Consumer Reports. There's some of the things that you need to deal with. And I'm saying them to you because the more you can normalize this and know that it's going to be coming and know that you're going to have to deal with it. Sometimes people begin to say, well, you know, well, where is the will? And where's the insurance? And what's the bank account? And when do I contact Social Security? And what's going on? And where can I find all this stuff? And they don't have it all together. So in addition to putting together the living will and having all the documents in place, know where all this stuff is and have it together so that whoever is in charge of yours, whether it's the healthcare power of attorney or the power of attorney, they will know where these documents are. Once again, you're giving a gift to an individual instead of having to search all over the things. I know of an individual that worked in a law office, and they represented a lot of different people, and they would have people come in, and a lot of times it would be older couples, and the man had handled all of the business. I mean, wife didn't have anything to do with it. She didn't know how to write a check. She didn't know where anything was. And so then all of a sudden they go to the lawyers. And so they're sitting there and they're going through the will and they're going through all the stuff and they've got all the documents and they're coming all together. And then all of a sudden they get right down to the end and they think, okay, now we can wrap all this stuff up. And this little old lady comes walking in and she walks in and she hands the lawyer she says, I was just looking through the drawers the other day and I found these things, and I think it's about 200 of them, and it has the word Exxon on it, and I think it's maybe, is that worth anything? Yeah, it might be. 200 shares of Exxon stock. And so, but you know, just didn't know, and because you don't know where the stuff is. Nobody's conveyed it. So please, all I'm saying to you is make preparations. There is normalcy in all of this. It's crazy and it's maddening. And we don't get to practice it, do we? It's not like we go for a walk every afternoon. We don't have a death every day. We don't have these kind of experiences. We're not in grief all the time. We don't go in and out of grief every other week. We don't do that. Sometimes it does gang up on us, and then when it does, it all snowballs, and we have to separate it all out. But what I try to do for you today is normalize this and let you know that there's a process, that there's a way in which you can handle this. And so I hope that this has been helpful. And so I want to open it now. Do you have any questions that I might be able to answer for you?